Automobiles. Automobiles, a game by AEG, a game that comes after trains and planes. So it is the third game in the line of games with one-word titles referring to vehicles and printed in this font and with this color palette. It seems like a pretty thin common thread among the games, but really this is the only thread that is there. Mechanically, thematically, these games are very different from one another. Trains is a deck building game, Planes is based on Mancala, and parenthetically, I don't think the Planes received nearly the warm reception that it deserved. It seems that people didn't like it very much. They thought, it's just a Mancala variant. And I thought, it's a Mancala variant, fun. Clearly there is a subjective element there, but I really enjoy playing, so I hope that people give it a second look. I find it to be an underappreciated game. Back to Automobiles. Automobiles, well, it seems to be based on deck building ideas, but instead of building a deck of cards, you build a pool of cubes, they go in a bag, and then you draw them randomly, and you generate actions based on the ones that you drew, which means also based on the ones that you previously purchased and placed in there. So at first, when I heard about this, I thought, whoa, interesting, but also I thought, so maybe it's just gimmicky, maybe it's just a way of sounding different, or giving us a deck building game under another guise. So one of the questions that we will try to answer in my review is, does it make sense to have a pool of cubes building game instead of a deck building? Is there anything that is intrinsically and objectively gained, or is it just a gimmick? That will be one of the questions. The other question is it fun? So Automobiles, a game which is a racing game. I realize now I haven't even told you about the topic. A racing game, 2 to 5 player games. Players will drive fairly unattractive small wooden cars around the track for a number of laps that they will decide to run. They agree in advance on a number of laps that the race will last, and of course the winner is the first player to complete the race. Let's see how the game works. The game has a nice looking mounted board that you see here. The board is also double-sided. There is Monza on the other side, so you have some replay value there given to the different configurations of the track. But the real big replay value factor here comes not from the track, even though that is a factor, but comes from the cubes, the color cubes that we'll talk about in a minute. The general idea of the game is that you will purchase cubes that you will place in your bag. You will add those cubes to your initial pool of cubes, much like you start in a deck building game with a small deck of cards, and you add more cards to that deck. And there are two types of cubes: the gear cubes, the special cube. Actually, there is a third type of cube which I wanted to forget about, which is the wear cubes. These are annoying cubes that will clog your bag and make your card less efficient. Now, as you can see, we have cubes of different colors, and we have cards that tell us what each cube does. So, for example, a dark gray cube allows us to move in a dark gray space. A light gray cube, light gray space, pretty intuitive. White cube, white space, and dark cube, and black cube, black space. This is important because not all spaces are born equal on the board. As you can see, some spaces are much bigger than others. This is a single space, even though you may see that and this is also a single space. Even though you may see there are segments in there that simply indicates where a car stands in there, how many cards can fit. But a segment is the area contained between two ball lines, not between these segments. So this is a single area, this is a single area. As you can see, moving, if you're here, and moving with a black cube allows you to move here, and then with a dark gray allows you to move here. If you're here and you get a gray cube, then you can move here, and again, that's much better than having to spend two white cubes. The darker the cube, the better the performance of your card, but also, as we will explain later, the more wear your card takes. After you move, by spending cubes, you will gain wear in ways that I will explain later, and you have again a reference, a card that tells you what these cubes do. This is for the basic cubes that allow you, we should say, basic movement as you shift gears, but you also have these other special cubes, What is the effect of these special cubes? Who knows before the game starts, because for each cube you have a set of cards detailing possible effects. So the red cubes in one game may have this effect, in another game this other effect, and this other effect, or this other effect. The green cubes may have one of these effects. So at the beginning of the game the players can draw effects randomly, they can choose them, so there can be very different combinations. I like this a lot. It makes the idea of building a pool of cubes to me different from what at first, I'll admit, it's look a little bit like a gimmick. If you're putting resources together, you get them randomly later, why switch, why change from the deck building thing? Well, because this way it's so much easier to customize it with a single pool of cubes and 4 cards. Or 5 cards, depending on the color. I obtained the same effect that I would have if I printed 4 decks of cards. In a deck building game, I would need a mini deck of this card, and a mini deck of this card, and a mini deck of this card to create that effect, to allow players to put this resource into their deck. With the pool of cubes building engine, all I need is a pool of cubes and this card here. So it makes it more economic, more elegant, and it gives a lot of replay value to the game. Also, future expansions can come with a single card, with 2 cards that tell me different things that the cubes do. I like this a lot. I like the replay value, the customization that players can do at the level of the design, at the level of the kind of challenges and opportunities that they want to give to themselves in each game. Each player has a player rate that you will use to place your cubes, using analogies from deck building games. This is your hand. You draw cubes from the back and you put it in this area here, and these are the cubes that you can use. In deck building games, this is your hand. This is where you put the cubes when you activate them to perform effects. Imagine this as the area where you push your cards face down to show them to other players to perform the effects. They're used, but they're not the discard pile yet, and the discard area is the discard pile. From here, when you need to draw new cubes, you will place the cubes in the discard area in your cubes, meaning when your bag is empty and you need to discard more and you need to get more cubes, you will empty the discard pile and put the cubes in here and draw from there. Now, you can take 2 types of turns. One is the main turn, when you spend cubes to activate effects, and the other type of turn is when you take a pit stop, which is not a type of turn that you should take very often. Cards start in a line here in this white area. As you can see, there are numbers printed on the initial spots. The areas behind get higher values. So at the beginning of the game, you start with your standard pool of cubes. Everybody has the same, but then players can also spend money to purchase more cubes. So in the very beginning, players can customize their bag, and here's the cost of each cube. So in this game, we're using this card for the blue cubes. Blue cubes cost 4, and they have that effect. Also, that is the amount of money that they generate if you do, quote-unquote, sell the cube, if you use the cube to purchase other cubes. In this game here, purple does this. This is what purple means in this game. Then to buy a new purple cube costs me 2, and if I'm going to use a purple cube to buy other cubes, I need to spend, that is the amount of money that the cube generates. So for the beginning, you buy some extra things, you buy some extra cubes, and then it is time to go. Starting with the first player, players will spend their cubes and to perform actions. The cubes that you use to move, the gear cubes, will go directly on the board. I guess you could plot your movement in your head and then spend cubes and show it, but it's much easier, and the rules recommend that you do so. That, suppose we are performing the movement for the purple card, that you place cubes on the board to identify where your car will go. I suppose that this is my turn for the time being, or I should say the movement that I plotted. This is the situation. This is it. When it comes to perform my movement, vroom, 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 vroom. I'm trying, obviously, to reach areas that have darker colors because that allows me to move faster. Again, this is a lot of gear cubes. Usually you have a combination of such cubes and other cubes that allow you to do other effects. And most likely you will want to spend some of your cubes moving, and some of your cubes you will discard them, you will put them in the use pile to generate money that you use to purchase more cubes. So for example, maybe I'm gonna, this cube here generates this money, I'm gonna discard the cube, put it in my use pile to buy this card, if these are the two cards available, because this one generates $3. This is pretty much it, in a sense. You use a combination of cubes to perform effects, to move, and to buy other cubes. After you move, however, here's the trick. The card does take some wear. It takes a number of wear cubes, which are the brown cubes, based on the darkest area that your car moved into each turn. It doesn't matter how many of those you moved into. Simply, if you went into 1 or 2 or 3 of a certain band, it doesn't matter. The darkest band only matters. In this case, I believe, as I was showing you, I moved in this area here, this type of band as my darkest band. So I'm gonna get 3 brown cubes so that are gonna get in my bag. They are not gonna do anything for me. They're simply clogging my bag, and I need to find ways of getting rid of them. I can use game effects to do so, or I can use a pit stop. A pit stop turn means that instead of doing all of the cool things that I mentioned, all I do is I do not move. So yes, pit stop may happen in the middle of the track. A little abstract, but who cares? So instead of doing anything else, I simply remove all brown cubes from my active hand, from my active pool of cubes. I remove them, and that is it. I don't do anything else. I also don't get new wear, because that would be ironic that if you got wear during a pit stop that is meant to remove wear. Game continues like this. Draw cubes, spend cubes, discard cubes, buy more cubes, use more cubes. Players are racing around the track. The interaction is in a sense, is minimal, because the buying and improving your buying cubes, improving your pool of cubes doesn't really contain an interactive factor. But if you have a bunch of cards, then cards cannot crash into each other, so actually they can get in each other's way, and that is where you have the interactive factor that really matters. But it is not as interactive, say, as other games about racing like Thunder Alley by GMT that I played a couple of years ago, where the interaction counts much more. But this is the idea. Get cubes, spend cubes, buy more cubes, race around the track until you complete the number of laps that the players have decided to race through. The suggested number is 3. You can play longer games if you so wish, and at the end, the player that first completes the final lap is the winner of the game. So in the end, luckily enough, the building your pool of cubes element was not gimmicky. By the way, somewhere in here they say it's a bag building deck, but I am a really pedantic person, and I have to say, you don't build the bag, you build the content of the bag. Well, that was annoying of me. So, automobiles is not gimmicky because I like the fact that those cubes can mean different things that would be much harder to have with cars. Yes, you could print cars that only have a color, no art, and then you would have another card telling you what they do. But that would make those components super unattractive, whereas colored wooden cubes, they're attractive. The renaissance of board gaming to me is at least in part due to the fact that people realize how fun it is to move around little wooden bits, colorful wooden bits that feel good when you manipulate them. They give you a tactile feel, a tactile connection to the design, and they're just fun. So it's fun to draw those cubes, it's fun to dump them in the bag and shuffle them around. The tactile element is definitely there. Sensorially speaking, the game looks good because of the cubes, looks good because of the cards. The board looks a little unattractive, looks a little drab, and the cards also a little underwhelming as components. You can easily upgrade them, I guess, but the spaces on the board are pretty small, so you need to find small models, which I'm sure hobbyists out there already know where to find. I don't, but I'm still happy. I'm still happy with the way it looks, the game looks, and with the production overall. And I'm also pretty satisfied with gameplay because I find it to be a pretty solid design. You had the advantages of deck building with the usual challenges that you have there, especially when you have game effects that clog your hand, that worsen the status of your the state of your deck, or in this case of your pool. So you do cool stuff, and the more cool stuff you do, the more weird you get. Overall, this is something that I really like in games, is the negative loop idea. And you see, it resonates, I believe, even with the video game crowd. Video game players that play racing games are familiar with the fact that if you're ahead, for no reason really, other people behind you, controlled by the AI, start driving faster. All of a sudden, maybe they are motivated. So it's just a trick, it's just an element of the game that has been designed to keep the game challenging. Here, you have that handled, to me, actually more elegantly, because you handle it by analog means, simply by dumping cubes in your bag, and the better you do, the more cubes you have to dump in there. So the game balances itself very well. Yes, there is a luck element when you draw your cubes, but ultimately everybody's facing the same challenges. Everybody starts more or less on the same ground. If you have less resources at the beginning, it's because you start from a better position. So the game is pretty even. Everybody has to face many challenges as the game progresses. So in the big scheme of things, when you look at the big picture, it seems to me that individual unlucky draws do not really affect the design, do not throw the design into chaos, pretty much like you have in deck building games. If you keep drawing bad cards, if you keep drawing bad hands of cards, probably it's because you built a bad deck. That's usually how it goes, and there is something similar here. It just seems to me that the interactions were very well. The interactions between all the various elements, again, between the choices that you have to make when you decide whether to purchase a cube or to use the cube to perform certain actions, to gain certain effect, or simply to run. Sometimes you use all of these crazy effects and you forget almost that the point is to keep moving, which of course is also very important. The pit stop option is there, but is not one that is very attractive, and is much more interesting to figure out alternative ways of getting rid of your wear, keeping your car going. And like in similar games that have similar effects, like Thunder Alley had similar ideas, that the faster your car goes, and the more likely it is it starts falling apart. And then you may have, like in that game here, the sense that the car that just keeps going and gets to the final line, and you have the impression it will just fall apart, it'll crumble, and it'll simply disintegrate right after finishing the race. And that's fine, because it still got to the race. So you can push your car even when it has a lot of wear and just hope that it will make it there. Or you can play more conservatively. So the game allows for different styles of gameplay. There is interactions as cars try to cut each other out, to block each other. It's not huge, actually. It's not as huge as you have in other games, such as in Thunder Alley, for example. So it also makes the game a little less cutthroat. There's still enough interaction here that you do get a sense that it is a race, not a multiplayer solo, but it's not such that then there will be bad blood going on and forming in the group, that the players will start resenting each other and being too bitter. You don't have that direct confrontation feel, even though it is a racing game. In Thunder Alley, especially because I'm a pretty aggressive player there, sometimes I don't say that Thunder Alley ruined friendships, but there was a time where players wouldn't be too happy to play the game with me, or to return my phone calls. I don't think this will happen with automobiles, just because the design is not one that allows one to play too much like an aggressive, I had a bad word in mind, but I'll keep this family friendly, like an aggressive bad person. So automobiles is a pretty good design. I like it. I think it's good to have a new title in this line of one-word titled games with nice fonts, the title, and warm colors that also have another thing in common, which is they're all good games. Actually, I enjoyed them very much. So there's that other common thread there, which is not all that thing, not as seen as the title thing. This is a good game. It's solid, it's fun. It's entertaining. I like the fact that it has replay value due to different combinations of cards. It can be easily expanded for the future, and I'm curious to see where the system goes. I hope they expand it, because I think that there is a lot that the system can offer with different tracks, with different sets of cards. I think the game can offer a lot. As is already, it offers quite a bit. I think it's a solid game, a solid design, fun game.